الحقيقة يمكن زي ما أعلنا الأسبوع اللي فات في اجتماع مجلس الوزراء إن يعني عن موعد المؤتمر الاقتصادي اللي دعا إليه فخامة الرئيس عبد الفتاح السيسي، وطلب إن الحكومة تنظم هذا المؤتمر بمشاركة كل أطياف المجتمع من الخبراء والمتخصصين معانا
or officials and experts to participate with us to develop a vision for the future of the Egyptian economy. We've set the date. It will be the 23rd or till the 25th of October, and we will announce the agenda of the conference after this cabinet's meeting. The meeting was finalized a few minutes ago, and I wanted to present to you the proposed agenda for the conference. We wish that this conference would achieve its main objective through agreeing on a specific roadmap for the future of Egyptian economy on the short term, the medium term, in all main sectors. Let me present to you in brief the topic. The beginning was the president designated the ministers to form this conference to discuss the Egyptian economy in light of the unprecedented world troubles and circumstances, with the participation of all experts and officials in parallel to the national dialogue invited for by the president. And this economic conference will come up with a package of incentives for industry exports to achieve the targets we announced as a government in the near future. Accordingly, I would like to emphasize that the state and the government are keen through this conference to explain the challenges facing the Egyptian economy in different fields, as well as holding a constructive dialogue with all segments of the society, as well as experts, to decide upon these challenges and a roadmap to move towards the development after the conference. I was so keen on following up everything that is raised about the conference, and we have heard the feedback of all experts and the media about what should be the outcomes of this conference. Once more, we are not going just to discuss the challenges and agree on them, but we'll come up with an economic roadmap for the state, and we will come up with a number of policies, clear measures that would lead to increasing the competitiveness and the flexibility of the Egyptian economy. Thus, the participants in this conference would be, of course, the ministers and the institutions, as well as the experts in different fields, in addition to the political parties. That's why we've identified 21 national and international entities that would be invited to this conference. We estimate that the number of participants would be 400 to 500 in this conference. They will attend to us, and there would be a number of sessions and events over 3 days, and the total number of participants would be 400 to 500. And the participating entities would be as follows: the state institutions, ministers, entities, the chambers of commerce, the chambers of industry, the exports councils, business councils, heads and presidents of universities and faculties, as well as heads of committees in the parliament and the senates, who will discuss the different topics in this conference, as well as the different international organizations in Egypt, the representatives of national and international companies, the ambassadors, As I said, we've identified 21 entities that would attend this conference, and we all wish that there would be effective participation from all these entities in this conference. We divided the conference over 3 days, and each day would focus on a specific domain. Day 1, for example, would discuss the policies of macroeconomics. On day 2, we will discuss empowering the private sector and creating an enabling working environment. Day 3 would discuss the roadmap for the national industry and economy. We will cover all sectors and how we will work in each sector and what would be the contribution of different entities to put a roadmap for each sector. Let me start with day 1. On day 1, we will start with an opening session during which we will take a glimpse about the Egyptian economy, its developments over the previous decades, and its flexibility in confronting the main economic challenges. And we have identified the past 10 years since 2011 till 2020, because we have been through 5 major crises, be it national or international. That's why we will introduce how the Egyptian economy looked like over the previous decades, and specifically during the past 30 years. What was the volume of the economy? And during this session, we will introduce to all experts and citizens how the state looked like. It would be followed by a second session on needed policies to enhance the capability of the Egyptian economy and its resilience. The philosophy of the sessions would be as following. We'll have a moderator for each session, and he will be one of the competent ministers as well as a keynote speaker, in addition to the other participants who would attend the session and intervene. And our main objective is that we as a government would listen to the minister or the official as an introduction in the beginning of the session, and the rest of the session would be for discussion, to listen to different experts and participants, be it main speakers or participants, because our objective is to listen to their opinions and to agree with them on the challenges as well as the steps that we will all use as an action plan for the state, with the participation of the largest number of experts and officials. That's why session 2 would discuss economic policies and what are the national priorities to achieve Egypt's Vision 2030 since 2022 up till 2030. We still have 8 years up till 2030, so what would be our priorities during that period? It would be followed by another session about fiscal policy and the volume of debt for the state, because this point was raised by a lot of people, and a lot of people talked about how worried they are about the volume of the Egyptian debt. So this session would discuss this matter as well as discussing the trends of the state. It would be followed by 1/3 and last session on day 1, and it will talk about inflation and the challenges the whole world is facing right now. You can see the inflation rates worldwide, unprecedented figures for 40 years. So we discussed the repercussion of this inflation, its relation to monetary policies, and what are we going to do in the future to emphasize our vision, and how we will deal with the problem of inflation and the rise in prices. Day 2, under the title The Empowerment of the Private Sector and Creating an Enabling Working Environment, we will have the first session through ratifying the document of the state ownership. You remember that we developed the draft of this document of state ownership, and we announced a community dialogue with all segments of the community over 3 months. And we held more than 40 sessions in which about 1,000 experts participated. And today we can call it a final draft for the document. Our objective during this first session on day 2 is to announce this draft document and endorse it, as it is so important. This document will be the economic constitution for the state. The second session on day 2 will discuss the opportunities of providing soft loans from international organizations to support the private sector. There is always the impression that the state borrows from international institutions to give loans to the government, but there are real opportunities for the private sector to receive soft loans. What do we mean by international soft loans? It means longer grace periods, less interest rate, and longer repayment periods. We've implemented this through the different ministries, and we provided soft loans to a number of private sector institutions. So the objective of day 2 is empowering the private sector. So we'll introduce to them how can we assist in receiving soft loans, and how can we contribute to the participation of the private sector in the mega projects. Next session would be an important one. It will introduce the role of the sovereign fund and its vision to increase partnership with the private sector. The sovereign fund would give a presentation on that, and there would be a dialogue with all experts on how can we participate through the sovereign fund in managing the state assets and encourage the private sector to participate in the management, the operation of these state-owned assets. The last session on day 2 would discuss developing the performance of the non-banking financial institutions, be it the capital market, the companies. Here we're talking about the financial regulatory authority, and it will discuss with all the companies investing in this sector how can we take steps to improve the performance of the non-banking financial institutions. Day 3 is considered to be an important one, as during this day we'll start identifying the different sectors of the Egyptian economy and meet experts and in all these sectors to agree on the challenges and to put a roadmap for this sector. So we will have 2 to 3 hours on day 3, a number of parallel sessions. These sessions will have 9 to 10 sessions held in parallel. We'll divide all the participants according to their specialities to different sessions, and the sessions that we will have here would be power, renewable energy in particular, and our trend today is investing in solar energy projects as well as wind energy and green hydrogen. And in this case we will discuss with the private sector how can we maximize partnership with the private sector. This would apply to all other sectors. Here we're talking about petrochemicals, telecommunications and IT, real estate development, green projects, transport, agriculture and land reclamation, livestock production, tourism and aviation projects, so that in each session we will have this dialogue, and the last session would be about the investment projects in Suez Canal region, as well as the investment opportunities. And we will add also the sector of education and health. In these sessions, we will have the competent minister with the experts to identify the challenges facing the private sector, and they will come up with a roadmap on how can we maximize the contribution of the private sector in this sector. This would be followed by another very important session, and we wanted it to be a public session. It is a roadmap for developing industry. And this is a very important point emphasized by the President, that we would come up with a framework as a strategy to develop the Egyptian industry and increase exports. So this would be a plenary session with the attendance of the Governor of the Central Bank of Egypt, the Minister of Industry, the Minister of Finance, and we fully realize the volume of challenges, and I was so keen to convene with industrialists, export councils, different chambers of industry to listen to their viewpoints. So this session would be an opportunity with the presence of the Minister of Finance to discuss the challenges regarding taxes. And since we'll have also the Governor of the Central Bank of Egypt, they will discuss facilitating the funding measures. So this will be a very important session. That's why we wanted to have a high level of participation. There would be a last session on day 3, during which we will introduce the most important outcomes and the recommendations of the conference and the initiatives to be announced through the agreement between the government and the participants. And afterwards we'll announce these recommendations and outcomes that would be a roadmap for the state as the President directed us. We have another very important thing here. We're talking about 400 to 500 participants, as we said. A large number of youth and experts might not be there with us, and they might have some ideas they want to share. So we will launch tomorrow a website for the conference, so as to open the door to all experts and even the youth to share their opinions, proposals, visions, and what the state should focus on. And if they have ideas, there would be out-of-the-box ideas shared by our youth. Besides those who would participate with us, we will listen to the opinion of youth through this website. And also we will have an application on the mobile phone, as well as the website. Our objective is to listen to as much ideas and visions as possible during this conference. So we have gathered 400 to 500 participants, but besides those, we will open to listening to the proposals and suggestions of others, so that all those who have ideas would share them through this website of the conference. And of course, in light of the big crisis the whole world is facing, and of course Egypt is part of this world, then we need to put to ourselves a roadmap to move forward with development. And we would like to increase the development rates through the participation of the private sector. I wanted to present to you the agenda of this conference, and if you have any questions, we're ready to answer them. Iman Touni, news sector, the Egyptian television. Since the state is working on the empowerment of private sector, especially with the document of the state ownership, do you have a specific percentage for the participation of the private sector? Maybe you can remember in the conference we held last May, we said that over the coming 3 years, we want the share of the private sector from the total investments to exceed 60%. So this is our goal. And we will discuss how can we achieve this during the conference, and it would be for the private sector to tell us what should be done to enhance the participation of the private sector in the total investments. What should be done? What are the challenges they see? How can we overcome these challenges? What are the steps to be taken by the government to achieve this goal? The outcomes and the recommendations of the conference, can they be translated in the form of regulations, laws, bylaws? And also entrepreneurship is very important, and SMEs are very important. So would this be included under industry? Entrepreneurship and emerging economies is an overlapping issue. It is cross-cutting with telecommunication and industry. So it would be there in all sectors. So I would like to emphasize this point. Of course, if in the recommendations we have the need for issuing a bylaw or a regulation, of course we'll do it. Any decision that is made by the President or the Cabinet would be formulated in a recommendation to be issued. Consequently, all the implementation tools needed to enforce these decisions and recommendations will be made immediately after this conference. Good evening, Aoud Ghanem, Extra News. I have a question of 2 parts. The first part, whether there is anything to commit the government to implement these recommendations, and the other part of the question, you said that there is an existing national dialogue, but the national dialogue has certain rules regarding selecting politicians, economists. So what are the criteria of selecting these 400 or 500 participants in this conference, and how this would have a positive impact on the Egyptian economy? Let me emphasize once more that we as a government are open to any ideas that would enhance the participation of the private sector in all the Egyptian economic activities. Egypt has been through very exceptional conditions since 2011 up till today. We have been through 2 revolutions, economic reform, 2 international crises, the pandemic, COVID-19, and the Russian-Ukrainian war. So let me be frank and say that any of these crises could have negatively impacted any country, but thank God the steps taken by the state, one of which is the economic reform program, enabled us to have resilience and to continue up till this moment. And of course, according to that, we know and realize that these exceptional circumstances made the private sector incapable of investing as we all wish. So what do we want in the future, and what does the private sector need to be able to participate in all the economic activities? So Our vision is that the rapporteurs of the Economic Committee in the National Dialogue would participate with us in this conference. And to emphasize this point, we will come up with a roadmap, and it needs a number of details. The national dialogue can start taking the outcome of this conference and work on it in developing detailed executive plans that might help me as a state to implement all that. So this is something very important. Of course, we as a state would be keen on being committed to the outcomes of this conference. Otherwise, what's the purpose of this conference? The purpose of the conference is to agree on specific things to be done by the state and to put a roadmap. Let me tell you that we have exceptional international circumstances right now. The foreign countries say we do not know what will happen tomorrow. No one today, as an international expert, can say how would the world look like next year. So we're talking here about our need to move together. Of course, we will have a short-term and medium-term plan, but let's agree on what we'll do tomorrow and in the near future to deal with this crisis. The whole world says that we haven't seen this crisis since World War II. And Egypt is, of course, a part of this crisis. This is a big international crisis, and we have our own specificities and challenges. That's why we need to put a roadmap for Egypt and to implement it with the participation of everybody so that it would be a plan we all agree upon. We'll take one last question. This conference will be a very important one, especially in light of the recent developments. Yet there are a number of strategies adopted by the state recently and the government. And during this quarter or the last quarter of this year, there might be some measures taken, like, for example, offering companies for sale, acquisition of companies, as well as the working program of the sovereign fund. So the international financing institutions and the investors in the Gulf are waiting for all these things to decide to get into the Egyptian market. So would you link the outcomes of the conference and what the government decided upon before regarding this agenda? This agenda is existing, of course, and we announced it. And we announced it, be it meetings or conferences with different entities. Despite that, we are committed to it and working on it, and new ideas might be raised during the conference. So it would be an opportunity for us while we're implementing this to add anything or amend anything if needed. But the main thing is there, the strategy offering a number of state assets for partnership. The conference is going to discuss how we will implement it and what are the challenges existing right now that might prevent the participation of the private sector. They would tell us, beware, okay, you want to do this, but there is an existing challenge that prevents this. So during the conference, we can agree on how can we overcome such challenges. Thank you all. And we wish that the conference will achieve the hopes of all Egyptians, and that we as a state is working on despite all the challenges we're facing today.
في مصر
And our objective is to continue development in Egypt and to double the development rates. And once more, we are keen on bigger effective participation of the private sector in the near future. Thank you.